Now, over 150,000 fans have signed a petition asking for the government to consider allowing supporters to return to stadiums. We can get more on this now and speak live to Stevenage Chairman Phil Wallace. Phil, we really appreciate you joining us this afternoon. It's an interesting way to go about trying to make change happen, isn't it? A petition like this, but it seems like it's positive news. Are you hopeful this will be discussed in Parliament?
I think I am, because I think this was started by the Dorking Wanderers chairman. It's an obvious thing, really, Kate, because I think we should be back in football. I think everybody thinks that we should be back in football. We're controlled by safety advisory groups, every club in the Football League, and we've worked really hard over the last few months to try and get a safe quantity of people into our stadium and be certified for that. So to have that taken away from us when we know that we can handle that number in a safe manner is really hard to take, especially when you see that, you know, all the things that people have said about being allowed in cinemas and pubs and lower league football. Then we should definitely be, in my opinion, allowed to bring fans back.
Yeah, it's tough, that one, Phil, isn't it? You see, you know, tickets being sold for the Royal Albert Hall and places like that. People are being allowed to go to events indoors. What do you make of that?
What do I think of that?
Yeah.
Well, I quite like the Royal Albert Hall, so I wouldn't mind going. It's just another example, isn't it? Of it seems to be almost lunacy that, and the government's trying to do the right thing by everybody, but you keep looking at these. Somebody told me yesterday that a women's team, you're allowed to go and watch a women's team, but you're not allowed to go and watch a professional team in the same stadium. With the same amount of people. There's just so many things going on that sort of beg a belief, that you feel like saying, look, can we just bring some common sense to this? We know it's difficult, but we're all professional football clubs. We've invested lots of time and lots of money in getting to understand how many people we can safely look after. Let us do it. Let us get on and do it.
Can you tell us a bit more about that, Phil? So we've seen, for example, in Germany, football teams have got the crowds back. What are sort of steps that you guys have taken to make it safe at Stevenage?
Well, I think the pages there's a protocol, return to playing, and a return to crowds protocol. I think I stopped counting the pages at about 120 or something. So it's enormous, really enormous. But basically, you're controlled by a safety advisory group, and that's made up of the health service, the local authority, the council authority, the police, and everyone sits around a table and decides on how you can safely administer your stadium. So they're the people that really should be, in my opinion, saying what should be happening here. I don't think it should be a governmental decision, sort of one size fits all. No one can watch professional football. Surely the groups that control us should be those people that decide whether we can, and if so, how many people we can safely accommodate.
Now, it's clear, of course, with this situation at the moment that lots of people and lots of organisations are suffering from not being able to have, you know, their consumers, their fans in the stadiums. Can you give us some sense of how you felt the impact on your local community?
Well, I think it's financial, firstly, Kate. It's really difficult to, as a lower non-league club, to wonder how you're going to get into 2021. We're all okay at the moment because we've had money advanced to us, so none of us are in trouble at the moment. But come November, December, I suspect that might change. You're looking at the local community, and I know you're aware that we did huge amounts for our community when coronavirus first hit us. So we're held in very high esteem, but we can't seem to connect with those people anymore. We are, in our particular club, we have a huge percentage of our income is conferencing and banqueting. We're not allowed to do any of that. So we've been hit really hard, and so has every club. And I think if you started to take a multiplier around the country, it would be phenomenal. So I'd just like to see some sort of let us carry on with the test events. Let's show you that we can do it, and give us a chance to probably try and save ourselves.
One other negative, I guess, from the opportunity of getting to play is what we saw happening to Leyton Orient after a large number of their players tested positive for COVID ahead of the game that they were supposed to have with Tottenham, which then had to be forfeited. You had to test your players and staff last week, didn't you? I mean, that's an additional financial strain from what I can tell.
Yeah, it is, and it's a different subject completely, but it's one that I'm not massively happy with, because we're all following the protocol, which is good in that we're all doing the same thing, because we wasn't before, because the action that I took was different from what other clubs took. So now we're all following the same protocol, which is test on symptom and isolate close contact. Definition of close contact being more than 15 minutes 2 metres away. Well, that's okay, but what happens when you get a symptomatic person on a Monday morning, when you've just come back from 3.5 hours on the coach and everyone's been on the coach?
Yeah.
Then you're going to be isolating your whole team. So my point really was that the chairman of the EFL was really keen to see us finish the season, and that's very commendable, and we should absolutely try and do that. But I just can't see how that's going to happen if we don't bring testing back again. Now, testing is what shut us down last time, because we couldn't afford to do it. You really need to test twice a week. If you test twice a week, you'll flatten the curve of COVID. So it's the right thing to do, but it's $3,500 every time you test, as far as our club's concerned. So nobody had that money last time. Nobody's got that money this time either. But perhaps we can go and find it. I said in my last article that I didn't understand why, if this was all about player welfare, why the PFA weren't contributing towards these costs, because it's the welfare of their players. They've got significant retained earnings of tens of millions of pounds. Okay, they wouldn't earn any money this year, but they wouldn't go that far backwards from their retained earnings, and it would be a great contribution if they could come up and say, we'll help with testing. Maybe players themselves can help with testing, or maybe it's split three ways between clubs and the players and the PFA. But if we could find a way to test more regularly, I think we would be able to control it. And I'm going along with the protocol for the moment because it might work. And if it does work, then that's fantastic. But if it doesn't work, rather than abandon football again, let's go to twice weekly testing, but let's try and find a way of funding it now before we need it, rather than when we need it.
Okay, so your preference would be to make sure that testing is funded, not just putting the onus of that onto the individual football clubs. Because of course, you mentioned Rick Parry, he said that there's going to be a financial black hole of around £200 million if the game is being played without supporters.
Yes. Kate, the clubs can't afford to pay for testing. We don't know how we're going to survive now in Leagues 1 and 2. Some of the clubs are okay, but not all. And to throw testing charges, you'll get the same result as last year, as March. We won't be able to continue. And my point is, let's see if we can solve that problem of funding before we need it. Maybe we don't have to use it, great, no problem. But let's not ignore it, because we won't be able to find a solution on the hoof. We couldn't find it last time, and we won't find it this time. So the black hole is huge. As Rick said, it's 250 million. I think he's using, I suspect it's more than that, because I suspect he's using lost income at gates. And if you take my club, for example, the income that we get each year is 25% of that comes from gates. The rest is from all the peripheral secondary spend, conferencing, banqueting. We've got sports centres and all the things that we've not been able to operate. So even getting a huge payout from the government or from the Premier League will help, but it won't solve the problem. It will keep us going longer, but maybe then we've got a vaccine, and maybe then everything's fine.
All things, of course, that you're talking about that require people to be in situ in Stevenage or in various other football grounds. I guess what we'd finish with, Phil, is what would be your message to the government, finally, as you look for them to make a U-turn?
Well, there's part of me, I mean, I don't like begging bowls, Kate, but there's part of me that's thinking, you're stopping us from surviving, and come up and give us a package that allows us to come back and try and keep ourselves alive. And I mean, you look at the transfer activity of 1.224 billion recently, and you wonder why the FA didn't, before that happened, bring a transfer levy in and put it into some sort of survival pot to help lower league clubs. It might have worked. I can understand why people wouldn't want to see that, but nothing's been done, and nothing. The only reason we're all surviving now is because we've kicked the can down the road. We've taken lots of money that we would have got later on, but when we get to that stage, when that money's not there anymore, I can't see how we're all going to finish.
Oh, Phil, well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us this afternoon.
Thank you,
We'll
Kate.
keep in touch again.